After taking a month off, Nintendo is back with another round of Sega Genesis games for the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. And they definitely delivered the goods this month with games like Mega Man, the Wily Wars, Comix Zone, Target Earth, and the meme-friendly Zero Wing. Those are some big names, but are any of them actually worth playing? In order to answer that question, I decided to flip through the pages of Electronic Gaming Monthly, Die Hard Game Fan, Machines Sega, and more classic video game magazines to see what critics said about these games when they first came out. All your base are belong to us because it's time for another jam-packed episode of the Nintendo Switch Online Review Crew.
Hand me the sacred spice, mutant.
Take it, but leave my Ultravision goggles. I cannot survive without them.
So you want to live in a comic book?
Greetings, puny mortals.
Welcome to the Comix Zone. Slay fiendish villains that get drawn back in page by hellish page. You'll feel right at home.
From the darkness of the oven, the slain beast.
We will live another day.
Comix Zone, only for Sega Genesis.
One of my favorite things about Sega in the 16-bit era was their adventurous attitude and the fact that they were just throwing anything at the wall to see what would stick. That was definitely the case when it came to Comix Zone, one of Sega's most stylish and polarizing Genesis games. Set inside and occasionally outside of the panels of a comic book, this tells the story of an artist who gets sucked into his own work and forced to become a beat-em-up star. With great graphics and a meta-narrative, you would think that this would be one of Sega's best remembered 16-bit hits, yet the reviews were definitely split at the time. Electronic Gaming Monthly really liked Comix Zone, with Ed calling it one of the better action games on the Genesis. It doesn't sound like a Genesis game at all, and there are lots of colors. The theme is cool, and the different pathways are a real plus. The fighting interface is a bit too loose, and for some reason, you lose life a little too easily. Still, this is an action game with a fresh concept. That's also the reason why Al liked it so much. In an age with so many Me Too games, Comix Zone demands to be noticed with its totally unique look, feel, and style. The control is pretty good, the sounds aren't the typical Sega rehash, and the on-running dialogue thrush you into the dark and city world of a comic book. Or something like that. On the other hand, there were a lot of critics who were less than enthusiastic about Comix Zone. GamePro, for example, gave the game a 3.5 out of 5. Similarly, Next Generation gave the game 3 stars out of 5, appreciating the graphics and the unique style, but beyond all the glitz is the gameplay, which is the same as Final Fight and any one of the many clones. All you do is continually press the attack button until your character pulls off a combo of moves and finishes off the opponent, and you do it again and again. Despite a few lower scores, most critics liked Comix Zone. Machines Sega called it one of the best brawlers on the Genesis and gave it an 89%. The highest scores ended up coming from Die Hard Game Fan, with some critics going as high as 96%. Comix Zone has some of the most unique ideas I've ever seen in a home video game. Beyond the non-linear gameplay, fantastic animation, cool music, and the why didn't anyone think of this before game presentation, Comix Zone is first class through and through. Personally, I agree that it's a little bit on the hard side, but I think the adventure is worth conquering. It's a great game that's just oozing with style. If you're excited for this week's Nintendo Switch Online announcements, then it's probably because of Mega Man, the Wily Wars. Although this is little more than a greatest hits package with upgraded graphics, a lot of fans view this as the Mega Man game they were never able to get their hands on. A large part of the reason for this is because Capcom never actually released this game in the United States, at least not as a physical cartridge. The only way to play it at the time was to subscribe to the Sega channel, which severely limited the scope of Wily's War and all but guaranteed that this Mega Man classic would remain a hidden gem for decades to come. Now, because of the unusual release strategy in the United States, no American magazine reviewed it. Thankfully, that was not the case in the UK, where Mega Man the Wily War managed to get a physical release. When Machines Sega reviewed the game back in 1995, they called it a faithful compilation of the first 3 games, slightly tarted up with more background detail and fully musical scores. The problem is that the Wily Wars pales in comparison when compared to the recent delights of Earthworm Jim, Dynamite Headdy, and Sparkster. Most gamers will feel like they took a spin through the wrong end of a TARDIS. Australia's own Comix Zone also reviewed the Wily Wars, calling it a brave release for Capcom. Although good for its time, these games really suffer when compared to the current crop of platformers. It would have been a far better move if Capcom could have enhanced the graphics and sonics of this game. Still, it contains the same playability that made this series such a cult hit for such a long time and will surely appeal to all platform lovers out there. This is pretty much what I expected from the critics at the time. While it's certainly a novelty, I'd say that the Wily Wars has held up better than these reviews let on.
I want Earthworm Jim 2! I want Road Rash 3! I want Comix Zone! I want Primal Rage! Mom!
Hey! What you want is Sega Channel, the only gift that lets you play up to 50 video games a month as often as you want, while your parents pay less than 50 cents a day. Ask for Sega Channel, and if they say yes, you say...
Thank you, Mother!
Sega.
Get hooked in. It's a gamer's dream come true. Parents, this holiday season, call your cable company to get hooked in to Sega Channel.
Between big names like Mega Man, Comix Zone, and the meme-friendly Zero Wing, it's easy to overlook Target Earth. Released all the way back in 1990, this is the first of the Assault Suit franchise, which also included 1992's Cybernator and Assault Suit Linos from 2016. Although not as widely known as the other games in this episode, I would love to say that this is a buried treasure that is well deserved of cult classic status. Unfortunately, I can't say any of that because this game is not great. Look, you don't have to take my word for it either, because this is one of the few times where the critics are all on the same page. Across the board, the score that kept popping up was 6 out of 10. For example, EGM's Steve complained about the game's harsh challenge. The attackers fill the screen and eventually become too much to fight off. The game is way too difficult, and only a few will see the higher levels. Martin echoed those opinions, arguing that Target Earth could have been far better if there was more to do. Graphics are cool, but backgrounds don't have that 3D effect of most Genesis games. Target Earth is just slightly above average, nothing spectacular. Unsurprisingly, you saw the same scores from EGM's sister magazine, Megaplay. Dave complained that Target Earth gets too difficult too quickly and the higher rounds are next to impossible, while Mike remained frustrated by what Target Earth could have been. The game is unique and has a good story, but the best this game has to offer is at the end. Now, if you're hoping to escape the deluge of 6s by turning to video games and computer entertainment, well, then prepare to be disappointed. Giving it a 6, they concluded that there are a few unique wrinkles here, like a hovering assault ship that offers to provide support cover and music that isn't so high a priority that sound effects are occasionally lost. But there's little else to write home about. Overall, it's a disappointing effort, one that will only appeal to starved shooter addicts. Like I said, the reviews are consistent. Everybody agrees that the difficulty is too high and the reward is too small. You can give it a try for yourself, but you're better off checking out the sequel, Cybernator. If you know Zero Wing, it's probably because of the crummy localization that made it an international meme. Beyond simply being a joke, Zero Wing is an action-packed shoot-'em-up from Toplin, the masters of making must-own shooters. Yeah, the localization is still terrible. But this game is filled with fantastic 16-bit cinemas, all kinds of cool weapons, and a full roster of alien ships to shoot down. Look, don't let the dumb meme overshadow the game, because this is one of those examples of a talented developer doing what they do best. In fact, do you want to know how much I like this game? Well, when Retrobit published their own re-release of Zero Wing last year, my name wound up in the instruction manual. Yeah, believe me when I tell you that Zero Wing rocks. Now, before you call me biased, here's Rich from Mean Machines backing me up. Considering the very tired genre, Toplin has come up trumps with a game that has a very original graphic style, along with some pretty original weaponry too. It's usually the difficulty level of the game that makes or breaks it. And just like with Hellfire, Zero Wing is something of a tough mother, even on the lowest difficulty setting. So, if it's thrills, spills, and a high death count you're after, look no further. Believe it or not, computer and video games like Zero Wing even more, giving it a 93%. Tim called it the game that breathes new life into shoot-em-ups. Just when we thought we'd blown up the last alien horror and were getting a bit bored with the so-so sameness of it all, along comes Zero Wing to blow the boredom away. Zero Wing is one of those cards which sits there just begging to be played until you finally crack and give it another go. Gimme, gimme, gimme! While not as glowing, you also saw a positive score from Sega Force, which gave it an 86% and called it one of the year's best shooters. Slightly lower than that was Sega Pro, which gave it a still decent 78%. However, if you're looking for the lowest mark, then let me introduce you to Mike from Super Gaming. Giving it a 6 out of 10, Mike argues that if it wasn't for the exciting cinematic touches, Zero Wing would have rated lower than a 6. The horizontal scrolling is very smooth with no flicker. Sound is a bit on the tinny side, with explosions missing the thunder found in other games. I know that the shooter is a successful formula, but I'd rather play Thunder Force 3 before I popped in Zero Wing. Look, there's no doubt that Thunder Force 3 is also a great game, but I don't overlook Zero Wing. And now you can even play it on your Switch, which is pretty damn cool if you ask me.
The new neighbors are moving in. Maybe they'll have someone you can play with.
The only thing better than having a new Sega Genesis would be getting your hands on tons and tons of games, like Pink Panther, Disney's Beauty and the Beast, and McDonald's Treasureland Adventure.
Do you want to play Sega Genesis?
Sega Genesis and game cartridges sold separately.
Hey, thanks for watching me talk about old reviews. If you liked this recap, then you should know that we post something like this every single time Nintendo adds a new retro game to one of their online services. We also have one for PlayStation games over at PS Plus, so check out both of those playlists. Now, here's the question I have for you. What system should come next to the Nintendo Switch Online service? I know there are rumors about the Game Boy and maybe even the Game Boy Advance coming, but what more would you like to see? Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back on Monday with the debut episode of Next Generation's 1-Star Review. It was actually supposed to go up today, but then, Nintendo added all these games at the last second, so it got pushed. We'll figure out their schedule eventually. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,